Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I want to talk about the purpose of the truth community. I was covering this in another video on my other channel, Apocalaughs Now, yesterday, entitled Finding the Truth is Overrated. And so this is a continuation of that video if you haven't seen that video yet. I think they're both well worth watching just from sort of a meta standpoint of what people are doing in the truth community. So I just have a few things to get to here, some headlines. Tom Brady addresses retirement rumors, still going through that process. And so, I'm not a Tom Brady fan. This isn't really about Tom Brady. But it's big news if he retires. And it was big news when it was announced all over the place because I turned on the TV and I was watching some sports thing. I don't know, was it Saturday? And then there was all these headlines. They were talking about Tom Brady retiring like it was fact. And then the next couple of days there was some, or maybe next day after that, it was all over the internets. Every site that I looked at, over all the sites I go through when I'm going through my daily morning process of finding things to cover here, had something about Tom Brady retiring, and it turned out that it was just a rumor, and it was not factual. Peyton Manning on Tom Brady retirement rumors. I don't imagine Tom's too happy with the news this weekend, and it says here, this is a famous ESPN reporter, Tom Brady is retiring from football after 22 extraordinary seasons, multiple sources tell Jeff Darlington and me. And so multiple sources who all turned out to be wrong because he wouldn't want to step on his own announcement, right? Like he hadn't told the team. In fact, he went back and told the team he hasn't decided yet. And so this was all both fake news and misinformation covered across the media. It happens all the time, and it shows you that all this stuff that they talk about, misinformation and fake news, is something that, they're totally against, but this is a flagrant case of that happening, right? Where they published something that wasn't true, and, they wanted to get ahead of everyone else. There's a competition, a story, whatever it is, breaking story. And so they decided to just go with something that wasn't true, right? Somebody made up a rumor. It was perpetrated throughout the news community and the internets. And as it turned out, Tom Brady just retired. So I made this voiceover part. I made the article part, and I was working on the voiceover. I went to eat breakfast, and the news broke that Tom Brady now officially said he retired, right? But they stepped on his announcement by doing that over the weekend, and they maybe forced his hand to come out and make a decision and announce early, right? And this is a guy that they say they love, and they're celebrating his career, but they, by their desire to be first and break the story, and, it's kind of a conspiracy theory because they hadn't talked to him directly. They talked to sources around him who screwed him over. These are, whatever they are, employees or close personal friends, or, maybe he fired a guy who, the guy who was in charge of his football life wasn't doing any work, right? Wasn't, preparing to do whatever Tom Brady does in the offseason. There's things like that, right? And their desire to break the story before giving him the respect and the team the respect for him to do it in the proper way, they went to press on a rumor because it's a big story, right? They want to be the ones to break it, But it's like shows you everything you need to know about the media. Somebody that they talk about being the GOAT and oh, wow, Tom Brady's great. And again, I don't like Tom Brady, so I kind of think it's funny, but, it shows you everything you need to know about the news media. So this is a story I saw the other day. L.I. woman was Long Island, I guess. Long Island woman with same name as actress fired by NYPD for NYPD funeral rant makes tearful plea. And so there was a police officer in New York that was shot or something like this. And there was a parade, and some actress whined about the parade. Now, parades suck, whatever, I understand that. but it was about some cop that died. And so she was canceled because that's what happens when you know, when something happens like that, right? And this woman has the same name as that woman, and she was fired, even though she has nothing to do with it. Here's her TikTok plea, right? And this is covered by New York Post.
Hello, my name is Jacqueline Michelle Guzman. I am a 25-year-old gymnastics coach and small business owner. This video is to clarify that I am not the Jacqueline Guzman that took that video, that awful video. I have been receiving multiple calls and messages and many threats. So my sister, who's also my partner, has been taking over and helping clearing that it's not me. I know the people that know me know it's not me, but for the people that don't, if you can just please take it.
And so this is a saddened woman who, just because she has the unfortunate same name, or the unfortunate situation of having the same name as somebody who did a rant and was canceled, she is being harassed and fired, I guess. And so, you know, like this shows you, like the internet, what's wrong with the internet, and and this anger, this actress was canceled, right? This actress was, she went on a rant. Maybe she didn't really understand, what was going on. Who knows what her rant was about, right? Parades are stupid. She went on a rant about it, and then these people are looking for her to tell her that she's a piece of crap. The actress was fired, kicked off her Broadway show or whatever she did, right? I didn't really read the story. I saw the headline, so I don't like. I kind of, something New York Post covered because it's in New York. But the bigger story here is all these hateful trolls out there who want to unleash their hate on somebody, went and found somebody with the same name and some stranger, and it isn't the right person, and they're just releasing their hate because they suck. They're hate-filled people, and they want to dump their hate on somebody else like they're better than that person because they think they're better than the person because the person, complained about a parade, right? And, that person's fired. They got whatever they got, but that isn't enough for these, like, frickin' hateful people out there, right? They got to dump their hate on a total stranger. It turns out to be the wrong person who's now making tearful TikTok videos, her plea or whatever. And maybe the people will find this TikTok video, New York Post is covering it. But this just goes to show you the state of the human condition right now, how bad people suck. And I see it on a daily basis, right? Not a lot to save here if you look just at what's going on the internets, and certainly in the story, the show, what I call the show of the beast, the whole, everything. Humanity doesn't appear to be worth saving, right? These articles go with what I'm going to say about the state of humanity and the state of the so-called truth community and truth in general. So the truth community in many ways has become pointless. It's become something that's insignificant, right? Something that doesn't do anything different. Like there's almost no difference now between being a truther for most people and being a so-called sheeple, right? The only difference is that you know or think you know more about what's going on in the world, like more of the story, not accepting the official story, and maybe a little bit more prepared to deal with what's coming down the pipe later on, right, when things really go south. Yeah, so there's, some differences to waking up. But, any movement, anything that has, a lot of people doing it, in this case, it's a movement of information, right? It's people having more information than other people. People having a, more in-depth, going deeper into what's really going on in their lives than other people. And so if you don't do something positive with that information, which for the most part, most truthers aren't, and if there isn't some evolutionary process, if things don't move forward in some way for you personally and for a community, then it is, stagnant. Master Chargy, the third master of the heartfulness system, used to talk about how rivers were wonderful. I've covered the water cycle before, and how, rivers are moving back to the sea, right? Inevitably, all the water is returning to the ocean where it was, the source, right? It's like a metaphor for your soul returning to merge back into the source, merge back into God. That you are, dropped on the periphery of your existence, of some existence, in raindrop form somewhere, on the planet, and that drop eventually makes it through creeks and, through, who knows what, right? Makes it through creeks and streams and rivers, and eventually returns to the source. Usually an ocean, but maybe a lake or something. But a pond, which is something small and is disconnected from the overall source, is, it ends up stinking. The water stagnates. The water doesn't flow through it, right? Everything ends up dying because the water gets unclean, right? It develops too much algae or whatever it might be. And various, maybe even chemicals and things like this. Because the water doesn't flow through it. Where rivers are clean, or cleaner. Of course, people dump stuff in the rivers, but rivers, they don't retain the water. The water's in constant movement and flow. And when you hoard things, like people who hoard resources and wealth or information, and it doesn't flow through, it stagnates, then it's corrupted, right? It doesn't, have a purpose. And so if you have a movement like the truth movement, which has changed dramatically in the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and, you've reached sort of a pinnacle of membership, and it's sort of flowed in one way or another into a stagnant pool, right? So something that had potential in the past is become stagnant, and you have people just doing the same things without really any purpose or outcome or goals, right? And the first part of this is, at this point, pretty much everyone's made up their mind, right? Like, there's not so many new people that are going to come into the so-called truth community. Before, like 10 years ago and, even 5 years ago, it was more like 10 years ago, the idea was that most people didn't know about the truth or narratives, but, 50% of people verbalized support for, the big event 2001 being, not believing the official story, right? And so there was that, right? So there was so many people that at least 50% had seen some sort of truther video and were, maybe they weren't all in, but at least they were skeptical of the official story. And so that shows you that probably everybody knew about it on some level. And so back then, the idea was that, we have to tell everyone about this. This was the Alex Jones model of information wars. I mentioned Alex Jones being COINTELPRO and a shill and, for the beastly system. He's definitely, somebody who's working for the system. And I got a couple of comments. One person saying that Alex Jones was a truther hero. He was a truth hero of truth. And he was the original person waking everybody up. Maybe 3 comments I got about it. Very, loving Alex Jones and saying, how could you say this? He's admitted it himself on several occasions, right? Well, there used to be on his FAQ or whatever it is, the part of your website that tells you all the rules and regulations, and people discovered that he said that he would turn over any information, comments, and things to the government if they requested it. So somebody who's as anti-government as Alex Jones, that was just one thing. And, another thing was he came out, admitted, I just showed the video, and I'm not going to try to convince people because I don't do that, right? But just so, like people don't know or you're just denying what you're seeing. But he came out and said he was, his family was classical Illuminati Rosicrucian. There was that. And then he admitted he was an actor when he was deposed, when he was forced to make a this was for his divorce with his wife and all these things, right? He admitted he was an actor. He said he was just an actor, play acting. And he just did this again with the Oath Keepers, saying that he just thought they were LARPing. And so when he is put in front of a legal situation, he changes his tune, right, about who he is or what he is. So he's admitted in various ways and levels what he really is, right? And, you know, his effect overall has been negative, right? It's been used as, oh, look at this crazy guy, look at this insane right-wing nut, and that he's given them the profile that they want. And so in every possible way, he's helped the beastly system, whether he's woken you up or something, and you think he's some great truther or not. You know, he is a part of the beast. He's not, you know, he's just like Trump was. Like Trump flirted with you. Trump flirted with the truth community. But Trump was never a truther. Trump was for Trump. Alex Jones is for Alex Jones. And then someone else said, you know, he was the first person to be deplatformed. Why would they deplatform him if he's COINTELPRO, if he's a shill? Because they had to set an example of people being deplatformed. They're doing it now with Joe Rogan, and they did it with Trump. People who aren't going to fight back, right? Or people who, you know, Joe Rogan is caving, but they want to make an example of, you know, they want somebody big that they show, all right, we're deplatforming this person, and so we can do it to anybody. And, you know, Alex Jones had run his course because they had Q, which, you know, the QBs, that worked out so much better for them, right? And so, like, just, I mean, it's obvious. It's not like, you know, debatable. You know, you can just see the guy, right? And the way he's he's done damage. And he made $160 million in 3 years on his, you know, I mean, he's got an enterprise there. Where do you think all that money came from and the support to, you know, he was the voice of the beginning of the truth community, which the controllers knew was going to happen. I mean, they run simulations when they opened up the internet. They knew that this was going to happen when the internet allowed people to become basically journalists, you know, individual independent journalists through YouTube and through the internet, through social media. They knew this was going to happen. They didn't, you know, this didn't come as some surprise, and so they needed to control it. And Alex Jones was the beginning of the control of it, and then they had, you know, the QBs and these various other movements and disinformation movements, so they could make everybody who questions the official story look crazy, right? So they have this profile out there where people who question the official story are crazy, paranoid, right-wing nut jobs, right? And we saw this woman on is it Bill Maher? What is his name? Somebody Maher, right? And you know, he's an HBO comedian. If you know, don't tell me, don't care, don't need to know. Like, I just, whatever. I think it's Bill Maher. Bob Maher, what is it? The comedian. And this woman's a liberal blogger, and she said all of her liberal friends, most of them agreed with her on this, you know, issue she was talking about, and said they're afraid to come forward because they don't want to look like crazy right-wing, you know, Trump supporters, right? They don't want to look like these demonized groups, you know, the anti-Voldemort people or whatever it is, right? That they don't want to look like that. That's what she said. And that's what she said. And, you know, that's because of what they've done with Alex Jones and these other people. They've created a profile, and anybody who speaks up against the official story is deemed a crazy conspiracy theorist. And so people who, you know, no matter what they feel about things inside, they don't tell their friends. They don't, you know, post it on social media, and they'll even attack people that they agree with. You know, I said this with that comic Aziz Ansari in my other video yesterday or the day before, whatever it was, on my other channel, where he was hammering Aaron Rodgers in a comedy bit, but then he said, oh, you know, maybe you want to look at some of the information Aaron Rodgers is looking at. Like he said, oh, he's just a dumb quarterback. But then he kind of basically said, yeah, but, you know, maybe you want to read some of these things, you know, because he's obviously reading them. But they don't want to admit it, right? They just, you know, they make fun of and they disparage people who are doing it, but inside they, you know, have their doubts and suspicions of the official story. It's a way to get everybody to, you know, through peer pressure and, you know, fear, to get everyone to go along with the official story, which shows you that everyone's made up their mind, right? That people are booing Kyrie Irving, that people are booing Aaron Rodgers. They're, you know, all this hate is being verbalized towards people who don't agree with the official story. And no matter what you say to these people, it's only going to make it worse. So we now know that everybody has gotten the information and most people have rejected it. I don't know how many people are, at least rejected it outwardly. Whether what they believe inside is what they believe inside. And so this idea that if you wake everybody up, that there would be this mass movement to change things is incorrect. We know that now. We knew that 2-3 years ago. We knew that probably 4 years ago. And, with the Trump stuff, we knew it, right? That this wasn't ever going to change. The system wasn't going to change. And then I went through the economy in various videos. We're $2 quadrillion in debt, and the way the economic system works. That we're trading debt. Debt is, this idea that a promise from the government and from banks, because both the governments and banks make money, print money, create money, manifest money, right? And so the banks loan out money they don't have. They loan out money into existence. When a bank says, oh, you've got $100,000, they don't have $100,000 in their vault that they're loaning you. They're just creating money. They're creating wealth by loaning you money that doesn't exist, that they don't have to loan. And so banks actually, it's a way of printing digital currency, and they're creating it. They're manifesting it. And, of course, you have the government that prints money with a promissory note that promised to pay. But that's where all that wealth and debt, like there's only $1.2 trillion of cash, of currency, American currency, and it's like, I don't know, $60 trillion globally, global currency. That's the value of the currency out there, right, in dollars. And so where's all the other wealth? There's, $2 quadrillion of debt. The derivatives market itself is $600 trillion, right? So how could there be $600 trillion in the derivatives market and only $1.2 trillion in currency? Well, that's because the banks have loaned money into existence, and there's all this other debt being traded as wealth. And if we got rid of the debt, if everybody paid off their debts, which is impossible, and all the debt disappeared, then we'd be broke because there'd be no currency, there'd be no value, right? And so that's an effed up system. What's the good part of a usury system? A usury is a debt-based fiat currency system, the system we have now. What's the good part? You can create unimaginable wealth without doing anything, without building anything, without creating something. Where you used to have to create something or grow something or harvest something, you had to do work then to create value. You cut some trees down and you mill the wood and you turn the wood into some planks, and then you sell it to somebody else, trade it to somebody else who's grown some wheat. And so they both did the work, the guy who milled the wood and the guy who grew the wheat, and they trade the wheat for the wood, right? Depending on which, what the value is. Both of them had to do the work first. But when you have a debt-based system and you can just get fake wealth on a promise, like you make a promise to pay it back, they loan money into existence, the bank does, and you have value of $100,000 and you haven't done anything, right? Then you buy the land and you buy the machinery and you mill the wood or whatever. But you can make a much bigger company where someone has to do it by hand, say, and then slowly make enough money to buy, a better saw to mill the wood, and better, equipment to cut down the trees or whatever it is, right? Farm equipment. Now you can just, get a loan and just start a business with money. You get the value up front, and that's why you have the lifestyle that you have. That's why our economies have grown crazy, crazy fast, because the money's loaned into existence first. I hope you can understand this, right? As opposed to doing the work first, you get the money first, and then you're able to do the work better because you have money to pay for all the equipment and all the things to make your business grow. And your business doesn't even have to be profitable. I mean, you could never be in the black. You could always be in the red, and still your stock prices might soar. That's like another crazy thing, where you don't even have to run your business effectively. You just have to show potential in your business. Like YouTube has never made money, right? Like, I mean, I think there's a couple of years, but for the most part, it loses money because of the expenses. But the fact that so many people use YouTube and there's potential, and so its value is in its potential, not in its earnings, not in its I mean, there's all these companies out there like that. So you understand this. Your lifestyle is created by a lie, created by an IOU, by a debt. And a debt is, in every sense of the word, demonic. And so understanding this, that debt-based system that's based in illusion and goes against the will of God, right, is, the whole thing. It's the whole system, not the parts you don't like, not the parts that, that you find offensive. Oh, I want to keep this. I want to, watch football on Sunday. I want running water in my house. I want air conditioning and heat. I want to drive my car all over the place. I want to own land. I want all these things, but I don't want the evil and the corruption, right? But they're all a part of it. And that's what people in the truth community don't understand. You're looking at the piece you don't like all the time and thinking that piece can be removed from the whole and the system will still work. And the people controlling the system, an illusionary system that feeds off illusion, right, feeds off, if you think about the system, for a lack of a better word, being run by the devil, right? And what I mean by the devil is, or demons, is higher developed souls that were once saints or angels or whatever it is, etheric beings, who have now willfully gone against God and the divine principles and laws. So these were higher developed souls that had power and knowledge and had evolved and got closer to God. And for some reason, they got pissed off at God or whatever happened. And they now are working against the divine system. They are willfully using their power and their position, their former position, as a way to take people, take a world, take a country, take a, whatever it is, away from divinity, right? And so when you have a system that's run by that, like those types of beings and whatever they are, right, etheric beings, and they're manifesting a world that goes against the will of the divine force, the divine creator, and getting people to use their freedom of choice to choose away from God, choose away from their soul's path, and, do their own egotistical things and become little mini demons themselves. You have a system that is been cut off from the divine forces, from God's love, and eventually it's going to collapse, wither, and die, because nothing can survive without the grace of God. And so we have two things here. The first thing is that the idea that waking people up is the goal of the truth community, waking as many people up, would somehow save the system. Well, we know right now that people all have this information. Pretty much everybody across the board, because of the internet, has the information that there is an alternative. There are alternative narratives and explanations of what's going on that aren't the official story, that are opposing the official story, and the majority of people have rejected those. The majority of people are not going along with that. And there are many people internally that agree with these narratives, but fear of ostracization and all these things, right? Fear of whatever, their jobs, their, whatever, their relationships, they are pretending, they are faking and going along with the official narratives, even though they question them. And they're not, able to verbalize that. So other than planting seeds, the first part of this, that waking people up, right, could change things, that's already, failed. That's not going to happen, right? Seeds are planted, sure. Maybe that'll affect people in one way or another. Probably not, because of, what I'm going to say, in just a bit. But other than planting some seeds, that's over, right? You have the demographics now, the people who, believe in alternative narratives to the official story, and those people are divided, don't like each other. I mean, it's not a cohesive group. There's no political power there. That part won't happen. But the other piece is that the system can't be saved economically, and it's a demonic system. It's a system that, and even if it wasn't, systems collapse, and the time for the system collapse is either now or in the near future. If it hasn't, it should have maybe collapsed already. And so there's that, right? And there's the individual collapse, the collapse of America, for example, right? I mean, you're going to see maybe a collapse of America in terms of America's no longer going to be number one, and that's going to affect everybody's lifestyle, and that's going to further collapse America because, America is sort of predicated on being the most dominant country, and China's economy is already past America's economy. And so America just has its military left. And so there's those things too, right? But either way, the system is going to collapse. It should collapse. And information isn't going to do shit, right? Getting truthful information isn't going to change anything, save anything, stop anything. It isn't going to do anything. So what are you going to use this information for? I mean, that's the question. Because, what's happened is, this is what sucks about the truth community. You have more and more people being obsessed with looking into the cesspit. It's like staring into the toilet, a disgusting toilet at some gas station that hasn't been cleaned in like a month, right? It's like, staring into the abyss of depravity and, just the ugliness, the cesspool of this, the cesspit of the cesspool of this system. And like combing through it, trying to figure out the truth. Like, why do that? Like, why stare into the grossness when nothing's going to change? It's also like, let's say your spouse is cheating on you or lying to you in some way, right? Your spouse is behaving in a way that you should just divorce him or her. And you, instead of divorcing them, like you find out they cheated or they've been, whatever kind of they've been lying to you in some way that's divorceable, like for you, you should have just divorced them. But you decide not to because you feel like you can't because you're dependent on them in some way or whatever it is, right? Who knows what the reason is for your kids, maybe a bunch of reasons. You can't divorce them. And so instead of just accepting that this person is tragically flawed, that you should get divorced but you can't, and making the best of it and focusing positively on living your life, you get obsessed with just covering their lives, their lies or their affairs. You hire private detectives or you're constantly spying on them and going through and, uncovering all their lies and deceptions, right? And why do that? Like, you already know the person's a scumbag. You can't divorce them because of whatever reason. And so just live your life like you married a scumbag and you're in this situation, a relationship with somebody, but instead you're just like hating them and seething with hatred over, everything, right? And you're just looking through it, combing through the filth of their lies and deception and being obsessed with it. And you end up being worse than them, right? Because, you could go live your life and just accept your circumstances, but you get obsessed with their depravity and catching them or whatever it is, constantly confronting them. Like, oh, you cheated on another person. Well, instead, all right, you caught them once, you didn't leave them. And so, then just accept this is what they're going to do. Right. But you're not doing that. You're turning your whole life's pursuit and catching them and, exposing stuff that you already know that is a part of their fundamental building block, a hallmark part of their character, right? Do you see what he just did? You see what he's doing? No, like you already know, like you knew it 10, 20 years ago. What are you doing, right? Move on with your life. Like, you have your own independent life. Even though you're in a marriage, you go and, make something of your life, right? You're stuck in this situation. Yeah, it sucks, but there's nothing you can do about it. So make the best of it. What can you use? Maybe you have some information in your experience. How can you use this experience to further yourself as a person, to further your spiritual evolution, your personal evolution? What can you do to, with this to turn it into something positive for you, right? You have this unpleasant circumstance. I mean, this is what I talk about with the heartfulness system. And, we're born into a system that's corrupt and dysfunctional. We can't change it. And we're 100% dependent on it, so we can't leave it. And there isn't another choice. We don't have some other alternative choice where we can get out of the system. I mean, unless we, change our orientation from within and we stop thinking about the system controlling us and we think about getting everything from God, that, God gave us this system, that God is bigger and, not bigger, but is, the bottom line to anything in the universe. And there's a reason for what's going on. It's part of a plan. And God wants us to have this experience of this system. So instead of taking this as the system is controlling me, I'll take it as coming from God. Like whatever negativity you're getting, whatever unfair behavior and treatment you're getting is coming from God and is what's best for you. So that's changing inside. Like that's one of the fundamental aspects of the heartfulness system, changing your orientation to the world, that everything's, not random and coming to you through other people's choices, but it's coming to you through God. And that works. It instead of thinking, oh, the system is giving me this, that, and the other, is, this is coming from the beast, this is coming from the controllers, this is coming from the so-called elite, right? The elite are doing this to me. Stop elite, right? This is coming from God. This COVID thing's coming from God, right? Even though it's whatever, man-made, lab, whatever it is, right? COVID's coming from God, right? The economy failing is coming from God. The Biden presidency is coming from God, regardless if there was cheating. No, just, this is part of God's plan. There's a reason. This isn't random. This is what I'm supposed to experience, right? Instead of being a victim and, thinking that these controllers control things that, they are more powerful than God, then no, this is all, part of God's plan. And there's a reason my soul wanted me to experience this. What is that reason? What is the reason that my soul's experienced this unpleasant thing, right? I can't change the external world, but I can change how I experience these events inside, how I interpret them, how I, categorize them, how I think about them, right? Instead of feeling like a victim, I can feel grateful for them. Oh, I'm grateful. This is, I have gratitude that God has given me this opportunity to evolve spiritually. That's why I say be grateful. That's, something I work at. It's not easy. It sucks in times. Working to find gratitude, to search and look for gratitude, or find a way to be grateful for something that absolutely sucks, right? And that's what is an internal transformation where you're flipping switches internally to change the way that you experience something. So instead of being bitter and feeling like a victim and being angry and hateful, that you use it as a way to help move your spiritual essence along in a positive direction. And in that, there's one thing that sucks for everybody, regardless whether you're a sheeple, regardless of, truth or whatever, you're Republican, Democrat, man, woman, anything that, whatever demographic, superficial demographics that you belong to. When a system collapses like this, a system of specialization where you've been told when your ancestors left the farm and left their skill set, behind them, I talk about this so much, and you're a specialized person dependent on a system that you realize, this is what I covered in my video yesterday, and you realize that the people that are doing the other specialized aspects of it, the people who are, specializing in this science or this medicine or this, food production or this energy production, or the people in charge of putting out Wi-Fi, 5G, are, corrupted. And they'll do anything for money and power, and they're putting out things that are bad for you and poisoning you in one way or another. Processed foods, Wi-Fi. I mean, in the Whispers of the Brighter World messages from Heartfulness, the number one negative thing that Babaji talks about in these messages, Babaji, the second master of the system, in his etheric form, he died in 1983, and he's giving these messages to this French woman, and he says over and over again, electromagnetic pollution, and what it causes affects to people's glandular system on a physical body, their physical bodies being affected by it. The glands he talks about are the gateways. There's glands next to every chakra, so there's the glands have all these important aspects, right? And he talks about how it negative affects people's subtle bodies, your spiritual essence. Your subtle bodies are, your etheric bodies that manifest into your mind and your ego and your, physical body, right? All these things. And so you have these subtle bodies that are negatively affected by the vibratory elements of these energies. And that's, that's something most people don't think about. I mean, now with 5G, but they're putting these things out and they're disrupting and making life worse for people, right? Making life better if you want a video and, download on your phone. What is it? Download on your phone quicker, right? It's, the speed of the internet's gotten better, but it's negatively affecting you spiritually and physically, right? And then I talk about my video from a long time ago, Read the Ingredients, how exhausting it is when you can't trust the powers that be, and you have to read the ingredients of everything. And then you have to figure out some of the ingredients and what they do. And you have to be an expert in so many things, in food, on energy, on, lifestyle. I mean, even, things like, Walmart spraying Teflon on T-shirts so they're stain resistant. Like, what does that do to me, right? After, the whole Teflon debacle, all these chemicals, all these things, that they are putting things out that are, are unnatural, and they hurt all of us in one way or another. And we got to figure out what that is. And then when we start having negative effects and all these things, right? And so reading the ingredients is exhausting, and it's hard to be an expert on everything. And when you can't trust the experts and you can't trust the system, media is the biggest one right now. Like, people spending all their time trying to figure out the real story because the media lies. And, the people who run the system lie, the government lies. And we have to go through and figure out their lies. So, whatever it is, right? But going back to my earlier point, the uncovering of the lies and the looking for the lies can't become the behavior or the goal itself. And that's what's happened in the truth community. Combing through the lies, staring at the toilet, staring at the cesspit can't become the goal. It has to be a means to an end. There has to be a reason for it. You find out what you need to know so you can make your decision. You're forced to make some sort of decision. You get enough information out there, and then you move on to something else. You don't sit there and obsess out. Once you've made your decision, what more information do you need to know? It's like you research a car that you want to buy. And you go on the internet, you find these different cars, a couple of different cars. Maybe you want a minivan. You find the one that's best for you, and you buy the thing, and then you start driving it, right? Well, are you going to spend the next 10 years of your life researching the minivan after you already purchased it, right? Master Chargy gave this great talk about how, especially in the West, we're in a constant process of choosing. There is a decision-making process. You make your choice, and you frickin' live with it. But there's so many, aspects of the American culture, with the divorce culture, that's, the big part of it, because a divorce being something where, marriage used to be for your whole life, and now there's divorce, that Americans are in a constant process of choosing, right? My brother said this about my nephew, that my nephew was in McDonald's thinking about what he was going to order at Burger King, right? And I talked to my nephew recently, I brought that up or something. And, that was his kind of personality. And so people are, if you're worried a lot, or you're a person who likes to make decisions, and you're always liking to shop, and you're a constant state of, that's the thing, we're consumers. So we're always making decisions because we're always consuming, and we're making choices about what we're going to purchase. We're shoppers. We're trained to be shoppers. And so people don't understand. You make your decision, and then you move on, and you move on to something else, but not to another decision. You live with your decisions, with your choices, right? We're not always supposed to be in a situation where we're choosing something, right? People end up, being in a relationship, so let's move to the next level, and then they're like wringing their hands, or should we have moved in together, or should we have been married? Whatever their decision, and constantly questioning about it, doubting it, then looking for reasons. Oh, maybe this person isn't right for me after you've just got married. There's not a great movie, an old movie, 1960s movie or something, 70s. And that guy, Charles Grodin, I usually find kind of annoying. I think he was annoying in this movie. But he's getting married to a woman. He gets married to a woman, or he's about to get married, and then he starts to doubt it. And then he goes from one woman to the next, to another, and then eventually comes back to the girl he was engaged to, right? That's the whole Seinfeld, the principle of Seinfeld, the show, where they never make adult decisions. They don't move on to the next level, right? Once you get married, then your whole life changes. You have kids, your whole life changes. You have these choices you make, and you enter into this stage of your life, and, you're supposed to move into something different. And, so you make your choices, you pay your money, and you take your chances, right? Maybe you get a dud, maybe you get a bad, whatever it might be. But we're in a constant state of choosing. And so it's not our job to uncover all the lies of the government, of whatever's going on now, the stuff with COVID, whatever it is, right? It's not our job to be in a state of, constantly researching it. You had to make your personal decision, and that's pretty much it. Nothing else is coming out of the truth community in terms of you have the advantages of using the information for something in your life, right? And if you've been convinced that the system is a complete deception, isn't on your side, and is leading you away from God and what's best in you, that's how I feel about the system. I mean, not everything's a lie. I don't have to uncover every lie, and I don't have to present it to people because everyone's got their own, everyone has their own decision-making process, right? You guys aren't, your decision-making process isn't my responsibility. And what you choose to do is really none of my business, right? Unless it affects me in some way. Of course, it always does. I mean, our choices affect each other in, a butterfly effect type of situation. But in reality, most things overtly don't affect us. We have to make our own decisions. And if we're forced to do something, we have to figure out what we're going to do about that. And then we move on with our lives, right? We're making decisions every day based on our diet. We're making health choices. Like I said, Tuesday Paul is screwing over Thursday Paul. We're all like people smoking, you're screwing over your future version of yourself who's going to get lung cancer, right? I mean, whatever your choices you're making now are going to affect you down the road, and you have the information, and, people can give you information why you should stop smoking. You see the commercial with some person on, an iron lung or whatever it is, right? If the effects of long-term cigarette use, and people still are going to do it anyway because that's their choice, right? Whatever, it's not our problem. I mean, it's going to affect the health care and all these things. Sure. It's going to change cigarette smoking and, obesity affects all of us on a, in terms of health insurance and then all these other things, right? But, ultimately it's each person's choice. And so if you understand that the system is bad system, demonic system, and even if it wasn't, it's still collapsing. Like this is what it looks like when a system collapses. We're 100% dependent on it, and our kids are even worse off. We're used to a certain type of lifestyle, which is going to be less. I don't know how much less. We don't know exactly how this is going to look, but your lifestyle in terms of, maybe you won't have running water, maybe you won't have electricity, or maybe you have electricity 3 hours a day instead of, maybe there'll be days or weeks without electricity, or maybe it'll be gone forever. I mean, who knows? Like, maybe your cell phone will stop working completely. You won't have ability to drive a car. I mean, what is life going to look like in the future? It's going to be not as good as it is now, right? And maybe there'll be huge population die-off. Most likely there will be. I mean, at some point there will be. And so, all these things, your lifestyle is going to change. And maybe the system will completely collapse. Maybe it'll partially collapse. And what are you going to do then? Like, how are you going to start training and preparing for what you can now see going to happen in the future? Like each person has to evaluate this for themselves, right? Or not. Just say, I'm going to party like it's 1999. People have their choices to make. I don't care. I can't face that inevitability. I'm just going to enjoy what I'm going to enjoy now and, forget about those things. And then there's a spiritual aspect. You're going to, instead of worrying about and focusing on your material wing, the heartfulness system, which is, unique in the field of spirituality because you have all these organizations that want you to focus just on your spiritual wing. But the heartfulness system says, yeah, you need a material wing. You have a body and you have a life. You have to contribute to society. But you also have a soul and a spiritual essence and a spiritual purpose. You need both wings to fly. And if you see one of these eagles or hawks, these birds of prey that that float on the wind currents, and they tilt one wing. If one wing goes down, they just spin in circles. So to move forward, you have to have the wings in balance, right? And so it's a beautiful teaching. So it becomes, what are you going to do with this information? What are you going to do with the knowledge that most people don't know about or don't want to accept, really don't want to accept more than anything else? You have insider information, and how is that going to affect the decisions you're making now in terms of preparing your future self or your family, your kids, or whatever it is, or younger people in general, for the inevitable collapse of our system, say, whoever it might be. I was talking about this with my wife, and then one of my viewers to my other video on Apocalaughsnow channel left a comment about this. I had already talked about it with my wife, but the comment sort of resonated, or said the same thing I did. That when COVID hit, when I got COVID, and then Omicron to some extent, but COVID more, it exposed lots of health issues that I had, lots of weaknesses in my system. And, I needed things to recover. And there wasn't really medicines available, right, in terms of allopathic medicines. And, I came to terms with that my body was missing nutrients and, supplements and things like this. And, I have this this holistic chiropractor, and he has a way of, finding these things. And it's, it works pretty good, but it's not, there's more that I need than just that. And my wife and I had to research and do things to sort of rebuild my body, and, as we're getting older. And, the American diet and the food that we have is low on nutrition, right? When you, let's say you grew up in a local tribal situation or a local village, and all the food you have is grown locally, right? You have a sort of an isolated little group of people, before there was car travel and plane travel. And so there was your local diet, things that grew near you, and you knew how to do everything. Your grandparents and your parents trained you, and information was passed on, and maybe they would come up with a new invention or something that would make it into the tribe or the local community. But all your food and all the way that you took care of yourself was based in your local environment, locally grown foods, organically grown foods. You would harvest, hunt, and gather, and maybe garden and farm or whatever it is. And then the clothes you wore, everything was suited to your lifestyle. And it went on for thousands of years, right? Hundreds of years at least. And people had cracked the code, and you didn't have to think about it because you could trust your ancestral knowledge because it worked. It kept your tribe strong. And then, diseases that you had were all known. There wasn't like diseases coming from all over the world, or diseases caused by, whatever bad toxic food that you were having, right? And so now you have, like, if you go to some foreign country, they have a whole bunch of different diseases there, for example. And then there's new diseases, all these things that are happening that people have to deal with. And there's travel now, and, people are connecting with other people. And now food can be shipped in from other countries that isn't even, close to the climate that you live in, right? It's not the food that God put in your area for you, the local wildlife, you humans included, that you had food in America that was suited to American climate and culture and, everything that was there. But now it comes from all over the world. So you can go to any type of, this food is being grown all over the world. And, now with chemicals being introduced, pesticides that are going into your body that your body wasn't prepared to, adjust to, because these chemicals and things that are unnatural, like now your body has to deal with these things. Your liver has to process them. And now alcohol and drugs are grown and, cultivated, and some of them are synthetic, and they have an effect on you and your, behaviors and all these things. And now, people aren't exercising, so they don't, burn off their toxins. So, all these things that are there. And then the system itself looks at you, the healthcare system or the, food system looks at you as, oh, how can we profit from you, in some way. They're not looking at, oh, what's going to make this person healthy? What's going to make this person the best that they can be? They're looking to make money as cheaply as possible, right? The cheap in terms of the foods they provide for you, or, whatever the long-term financial benefits to the medical system. If you're in a constant state of chronically bad health, right, that you keep on having to come back, and they keep on giving you drugs, and, and eventually, absorbing all your wealth as you get older. I've talked about that with my dad and, my mom, the way that they died, my dad particularly, where, they just keep the person alive, and he's just, giving away all the resources, the family resources to, the system to keep them alive, even though they're no longer able to function and enjoy their life at all, right? Eventually maybe going into nursing homes, and the whole family wealth gets absorbed by this end-of-life system. And so since it's just a mess, like our foods, we're eating foods, there's all these different diets, and like, oh, this is the paleo diet, or, whatever, freaking Weight Watchers or whatever these different, just not just in terms of diets to lose weight, but the kind of foods that you eat. Everyone's making choices about their diet and their lifestyle, and the kind of foods you like, and the way that they're cooked, and the nutritional value, and we're not conscious of it, right? The system isn't educating us. If you look at the food pyramid, it's a joke, right? Like what's healthy and what's not. And so the majority of things out there aren't healthy. Our lifestyle isn't healthy. The effects of the internet and Wi-Fi, we don't even know about that, right? It's something that's talked about over and over again, the whispers of the brighter world messages, like I said. So in all that, you start to do research about nutrition, and you start reading the ingredients and figuring out, there's all these different experts telling you different things, and how do you help your immune system, for example. Your liver isn't working, like how do you get these things going again in a natural way, right? And you're not an expert. Like maybe you become more of an expert, but it's so many different, like in the medical field, you have people who specialize in the eyesight or brain health or heart health, or respiratory health, or ear, eyes, nose, and throat, or foot doctor, right? I mean, all these different specializations, and the body is this complex system, and we're just throwing more new things, like Wi-Fi is a new thing, and various types of foods that are being eaten are a new thing, and new diseases and new whatever, right? Just more things that are in the mix, and it's becoming more and more complex, right? How these things affect you, and you don't know what's affecting you. The Wi-Fi could be making you feel bad, but you don't know it's the Wi-Fi, and so you think, oh my God, maybe I'm I need some sort of whatever this thing, right? But maybe it's something else that's affecting you, and you don't know. And there's no real experts on all of these things, on all these aspects of things that are bringing you down physically or emotionally or spiritually or whatever it might be. And then I found supplements and things that really boosted my system, but how long do I take them? At what point is my is there enough nutrition? Like, if you're down minerals, like you see it with cows, right? We have, 2 dairy cows, and there's these cool minerals, and they smell like the ocean. We get these great organic minerals. And from years ago on our old farm, like every time I poured them in, I'm like, wow, it smells like the ocean. There's some there's ocean stuff in there, or whatever it might be, right? And there's all these minerals. And the cows, if they need them, they devour them. They just go to town, and I'd pour it in and they'd be gone the next day. I'd fill a whole bucket full. The next day I pour more in. And then the next day I pour more in, and they don't touch them because their bodies have, I mean, I've been eating kale lately because of just my eyesight and things. And leafy greens are important. And I've always disliked the taste of kale, especially if it's not cooked. And I just ate some raw kale, and I didn't like it. And then, I just started forcing myself every day. Just take a handful like that spring mix, and I shove it in my mouth, right? Like a couple of handfuls of kale. And now I like it. Like I just been doing it, and it's like my body recognizes, oh, I need this or something, right? You'll see dogs every once in a while, they'll eat grass, which makes them throw up because maybe there's some reason they need to throw, and they just have a natural sense of it. But, we don't know, like we're not going to walk around the yard and find things that, oh my God, my body needs this, right? We don't have that level of instinctual ability. So, if we have poor nutrition, even though we have, all this food we're eating, but it's low in nutrition, and we're missing out on essential things we need, and our topsoil has been degraded by factory farming, and so we're not getting what we need, and then we, figure out, oh my God, this thing makes me feel good. I mean, this happened years ago when I was in college, and I was drinking and using drugs, and, my brother started eating macrobiotic food, the macrobiotic diet, and I tried it, and I, for about 3 months, I felt great, right? Because, the diet I had, I was eating fast foods, and I mean, I was just in college making my own dietary choices. I didn't really know how to cook and, all these things. I started making macrobiotic food and changing, these things. And there was an immediate boost, but it leveled off. After a couple of months, I didn't feel, there's that transition when you go from eating unhealthy food to eating healthy food, or exercising, or you get out of a bad relationship into a good one. And there's that initial sort of honeymoon period, that boost, you get, but then it sort of levels off, right? And at what point, maybe you're taking supplements that if you, for the long-term effect, or you just have too much of it, and now your body's not wanting them, and there might be causing an issue, right? And how do you figure all that out? Like, it's just a freaking mess. It's just, this is what I'm talking about in terms of reading the ingredients. It's not like your parents train you and with solid, life skills and, things you need to live in your local environment. Our environment's changing so much, and it's an international environment. It's all affecting each other. And the people running it don't give a crap about me or you or any of us. And they're looking at us as whatever, expendable pieces in the puzzle, consumers, and, and wanting us to just buy whatever crap that they're selling so that they can have money and power. So they're not trustworthy. And even if they were, it's a mess. It's a mess of, too much different, ways of thinking about life and different available choices, physical choices, food choices, medical choices. And so we're forced to read the ingredients of things that we don't even understand and aren't trained to do. And it's on all levels of our existence, when all we've ever been trained to do is live in a specialized capacity, to do one specialized job and trust all the other specialists out there to do good, solid work that's beneficial to all of us. Trust the government to make good choices. Trust the politicians to tell us the truth. Trust the media to tell us the truth. Trust the media and the politicians to make the right decisions that will move us forward. Like everybody doing their job. Like the people growing the food, they'll do it in a way that's good for everybody. They'll research what they're doing and make sure that the pesticides they're using or the way that they're farming creates good, healthy food. And the way the stores sell it, and the processed foods, the cooked foods, that they put quality ingredients in your chicken McNuggets. So when you feed them to your kid, that your kid's getting their proper nutrition. And that the Wi-Fi they're putting in your house, so how that affects you and it's not going to hurt you. That they've done the studies that when they introduce this to your family. And also having all these devices and social media and all the screen time and the video games and those things that you're not going to get addicted to, and you're not going to give up your physical real world life so that you can dive into the abyss that's the internets, right? The cyber worlds, and now Facebook and their new virtual reality, and how this is going to affect you, that they've studied it and they're not going to do anything that would harm you, right? I mean, you can go through everything, the medical community and every aspect of all these things that you're supposed to trust blindly because you're specialized doing your specialized work and you're doing your specialized work with character and integrity, and you expect everyone else to do it. But maybe you're not. Maybe you're not trustworthy. Maybe you're lying. Maybe you're cheating your fellow man, whatever it is, right? Fellow human beings or the system or the planet, right? And ultimately yourself and God, you're cheating your soul, right? you're screwing your soul over in future versions of yourself. And so, this is what we live with right now. It's a mess. And so how are you going to utilize this information, of the, debauched system that we have, the demonic system we have, to make something better for yourself and future generations of human beings, right? Instead of just diving into the cesspit and trying to, figure out the scummy lies and, having hatred for the leaders and the people who are running the system, a system that, is based in deception, that it needs deception to keep on going. So of course you're going to find they're deceiving you. The system won't run without deception. And if everybody woke up, the system would collapse because people have to believe in the system for the system to work. People have to believe in the lies for the system to work. So it's a deceptive system, and we're 100% dependent on it, and it's collapsing. Like that's the information, simple information. Every truther should come to this, at some point in their truther evolution. All right, those are the three things. It's a demonic, corrupt system, and we're 100% dependent on this system, and it's collapsing. What am I going to do with this information? Like that's what every person has to ask themselves, right? And it's not going to be the same answer for each person. But you have this information, and, instead of diving into the negativity, make something positive out of it. And, of course, spirituality, I mean, that's the one answer that, at least should be part of the answer, which is connecting to God internally and relying on God, like I said earlier, and stop thinking everything comes from the controllers. It actually comes from God, and it's for your best spiritual evolution. It's for your best and your spiritual evolution. Only spirituality can save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.